One of the things we always try to strive for is safety. We want to make sure that everybody's safe and don't have any injuries out on the job site. So a couple things that you can have with your personal protective equipment. One is a good pair of gloves, either leather or something like this. Splinters and stuff like that aren't a big deal. They're a nuisance, but cutting and other abrasives can really hurt your hands. So just having a nice pair of gloves. Hearing protection is a big deal. We use nailers, there's saws going, the generator sometimes, compressor, all that stuff. Doesn't seem like it's very loud, but after a while, especially in some of those closed spaces, it can get really loud. So we want to take care of our ears with that. Last but not least, probably most important is a good pair of safety glasses. These are impact rated sunglasses that obviously help in the sunlight. Had a few instances where you're nailing and a piece of the nails can pop off, the wood can splinter and can shoot up, and hopefully not in your eyes, but if you don't have these on, it can be dangerous. A couple other things to think about on the site is ladder safety. These are not very tall, so you don't have to worry about falling very far, but obviously we don't want to fall. And also paying attention to where everybody else is. People need to pay attention not to walk underneath the ladders, and when you're on the roof, we want to make sure that we're not dropping things, ladders and stuff like that. But being aware of where people are, especially when you're shooting the pneumatic nailers, if you're using pneumatic nailers, making sure that there aren't people underneath, particularly putting the roof sheeting on, where the nails can miss the stud and go through and potentially injure somebody. To get started, what you want to do is kind of find the most level spot on the ground. If you've got a concrete slab, it's great. If not, try to find the most level part where the homeowner wants it. It'll really help. But you want to bring in the blocks and the runners and kind of get those pre-set up. So each runner gets 3, one in the middle, in both ends. And you want to go ahead and pull a tape to make those about 5 feet apart, outside to outside, and that will give you a pretty close to where they actually go on the floor frame, and that'll help you to not have the blocks all the way to one side of the runner. Set the floor frame on it so you can level the frame and not each individual runner separately. And what you're going to use to level it, you can use treated 2x6. I'll usually bring some of these, some 5/4 deck board that are a little bit shorter, and you're just going to put them on the block. You want them to go with the block. You want the block to face like this, so there's no real danger of it rolling over. If there is some side-to-side movement, it's still on the block. And then to fine-tune it, I always want to use treated material so that it's not going to deteriorate over time. But these cedar shake shingles are a great way to kind of fine-tune the levelness. Before we attach the floor frame to the runners, you want to make sure that the frame is relatively square. Otherwise, it makes it really hard to put the sheeting on. So you can want to go ahead and fasten it at each end just to kind of hold it in place. But then pull a diagonal, which should be a little bit over 173. And you're going to pull that from both corners. If it's a little bit off, you can move it to make it right. And then 173 gets you nice and square to get started on the sheeting. Okay, the actual placement of the 4x4s is 18 inches in from the outside edge. So just measure and mark before you finish them. Measure and mark 18 inches. The 4x4 goes inside of that. And like I said before, you can go ahead and fasten these in so that it kind of keeps it in place as we go through the rest of the process. It's also a good idea as you mark your 18 inches on both ends to go ahead and put a mark of your 18 inches somewhere here in the middle. In case you have a really bowed 4x4, you can take that out and make sure that it's where it needs to be. So after you get the floor frame squared up, you want to attach it to the rest of the 4x4. So at each of these joists, you're going to go ahead and fasten it in from each side at a 45. What you want to try to avoid is overdrawing it in and pushing this lumber out of where it needs to be. It needs to be right here, nice and straight. If you draw it too far over, it may miss where your nails go later. Okay, so to put the floor framing on, what we're going to do is we're going to start on one side on this first corner. This first sheet you're going to have to indent it in because these aren't 4x8 sheets. When you put it in the tongue in the groove, you lose that 3/8 of an inch. So just come in about 1/4 of an inch or a little bit more and get that corner set. And go ahead and nail along this edge. And make this edge your story edge and make it absolutely flush. The other side is going to be a little different. So on this side, you want to make sure that you stay true to your indent. Maybe make a mark on that side, how far you went in. And then what you can do by just nailing that side, you can move this whole sheet and you can square up the floor as you go. With keeping that side absolutely flush, there's going to be a little bit of a gap over here, and that's fine. It has to do with the treated lumber being a little bit thicker than the non-treated stuff. In all around the edge is the treated lumber. You want to put your nails and use a galvanized nail so that it doesn't deteriorate. All of these interior floor joists are white wood, so you can use regular 8-penny nails on those. So what we want to do is make our end the same, indent the same, put a nail. And go ahead and nail every 6 to 8 inches. One thing you want to avoid is nailing anywhere close to this tongue and groove part, because if you damage that, it makes the next piece a little harder to go in. So for the second and the last sheet, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to start on this side at this corner, and you're going to get it put in place. To put this tongue and groove in place, you may have to use a block and hammer and tap that into place. You want to be careful to protect the edges of the tongue and the groove so you're not damaging that as you're smacking it together. But start on this side, get it nailed into place, and then transition to the other side. So as you're putting these on, if you notice that the one side that you're trying to keep flush is a little bit off, what you may have to do is take a hammer and make the frame a little bit, rack the frame a little bit to make it square. So from whichever side you need to do that to, you can just take a hammer and pry, or a pry bar, and make that square so you can tack it down. What I'm doing now is taking and placing some measurements to where we're going to snap some lines to know where the walls go. So as we're putting the walls up, you can bring everything to the line and make sure it's all nice and straight. You want to measure from the outside of the floor frame and mark 3.5 inches and not the floor sheeting. So you can see that would be different. So on these sides where it's a little bit indented, you're going to have to sort of kind of guess where that is. But pull from the outside edge of the floor frame and not the sheeting. So we've got the rest of our stuff laid out. As you can see, we snapped a line where each of the joists go. That just helps make sure that the floor gets attached right. And then we attached and made a chalk line of our marks here. So when we get done and we stand the walls, we're going to bring that wall to this edge, and that'll help us keep everything straight and square.